My name is Desmond. I am 68 years old. I am a retired logistics fleet owner. Pretending to be bankrupt, I begged for shelter. My rich kids slammed the door in my face. Only my youngest son, a poor teacher, took me in ready to sell his wedding ring to feed me. Next morning, my lawyer arrived with a $50 million check. They were stunned. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe in karma. I stood shivering under the relentless downpour outside my eldest son Andre's mansion. My old coat was soaked through, and water dripped from the rim of my faded hat onto my nose. In my trembling hand, I gripped a black plastic bag containing the few belongings I claimed were all I had left. The heavy oak door cracked open just an inch. I saw the face of my daughter-in-law, Courtney. Her blue eyes scanned me with disgust, not pity. She turned back to someone inside and laughed a cruel, cold sound that cut sharper than the wind. "Tell him to leave," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "The smell of wet dog will ruin the Persian rugs." Then the door slammed shut right in my face. The bolt clicked, locking me out. I did not cry because of the cold. I cried because my heart was shattering. My hand went into my coat pocket, and fingers closed around a piece of paper. It was not an eviction notice. It was a certified cashier's check for $50 million from the sale of my logistics company, signed just hours ago. To understand why a man worth $50 million was standing in the rain like a beggar, you have to understand where I came from. 40 years ago, my late wife Ruby and I started with nothing but a rusted delivery truck on the south side of Chicago. I still remember the smell of diesel and sweat. I drove 18 hours a day hauling freight across state lines while Ruby managed the books from our kitchen table. We skipped meals so Andre and Bianca could attend private schools. We wanted to get them out of the neighborhood. We wanted to give them the world. We succeeded too well. Over the years, as my fleet grew from 1 truck to 500, my children drifted away. They went to Ivy League universities and married people like Courtney and Kyle who looked down on where we came from. They became ashamed of my calloused hands and my loud laugh. They bleached their souls to fit into a world that never truly accepted them. Then 6 months ago, my world stopped. Ruby passed away. At her funeral, while I wept over her casket, I heard Andre and Bianca whispering in the back row. They were not sharing memories of their mother. They were arguing about who would get the lake house and how much the vintage car collection was worth. They looked at me not as a grieving father, but as an obstacle standing between them and an inheritance. That was the moment something inside me broke and something else hardened. I decided I could not let my life's work ruin them further. I needed to know if there was any love left in their hearts, or if it had all been replaced by greed. So I devised a plan. I sold the company in secret. I put on my oldest clothes. I went to them not as a millionaire, but as a father who had lost everything. I needed to see who would open the door for Desmond, the man not Desmond, the bank account. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the long driveway of Andre's estate into a slick black river. I sat in my battered Ford pickup truck for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This was the same truck I used to drive when I visited construction sites back when the business was just taking off. I had kept it for sentimental reasons, but today it was a prop in the most painful play of my life. I looked up at the house. It was a sprawling modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with warm golden light. I paid for that house. I paid for the down payment as a wedding gift when Andre married Courtney. I took a deep breath, grabbed my plastic bag of clothes, and stepped out into the storm. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from a terrifying kind of hope. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped Andre would see his father soaking wet and broken and pull me inside without a second thought. I rang the doorbell. I could hear the chime echo deep inside the house. Moments later, the heavy oak door swung open. It was Courtney. She was wearing a white silk blouse and holding a glass of wine. When she saw me, her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of sheer horror. She did not say hello. She did not ask if I was okay. She recoiled, stepping back as if I were a disease. "Oh God," she whispered loud enough for me to hear. "Andre, get down here. Your father is at the door, and he looks like a vagrant." I stood there, water dripping from my nose onto their pristine porch. Andre appeared behind her. My son. My firstborn. He looked immaculate in a tailored suit, probably costing more than my first car. When he saw me, his eyes widened, but there was no warmth in them, only panic. "Dad," he said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here? You are dripping on the stone." "Andre," I said, letting my voice crack. I needed to sell the lie completely. "I lost it all, son. The investment deal I told you about. It was a scam. They took everything, the house, the accounts, even my pension. I have nowhere to go. I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I get back on my feet. Just a corner of the basement. Anything." I watched his face. I watched for the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders. I watched for the young man I taught to drive. But that person was gone. Andre looked at Courtney, and she gave a sharp, imperceptible shake of her head. Her nose wrinkled as she caught the scent of damp wool and old rain that clung to me. "Andre, we have the Hendersons coming for dinner in an hour," she hissed. "We cannot have him here. Look at him. He smells like the street. It will ruin the evening." Andre turned back to me, and he could not even look me in the eye. He looked at his polished shoes. "Dad, look, this is a really bad time. We have guests coming, important guests for my firm. We cannot have you staying here. We just do not have the room right now." I looked past him into the massive foyer. I knew for a fact they had 5 guest bedrooms. I knew because I paid for the renovation of 2 of them last year. "You do not have room," I repeated, my voice quiet. "Andre, I am your father. I am sleeping in my truck." Andre winced. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his money clip. He peeled off 2 $100 bills. His hands were shaking, but not from emotion. They were shaking from haste. He wanted me gone. "Here," he said, thrusting the money at me. "Take this. There is a Motel 6 out on the highway about 10 miles down. It is cheap. You can stay there for a few nights. I will call you next week and we can figure something out. But right now you have to go." He tried to close the door, but I put my hand out. "Andre, please," I begged. "I do not want to be alone tonight. I just buried your mother 6 months ago." Courtney stepped forward, her face twisted with annoyance. "That is enough," she snapped. "We are not running a shelter here, Desmond. And please move that truck off the driveway immediately. It is an eyesore. If our guests see that rust bucket parked next to our Range Rover, they will think we are running a junkyard." Andre looked at his wife, then at me. He chose her. He chose the image. He chose the lie. "Please, Dad, just go," he whispered. "You are embarrassing us." The door closed. The sound of the lock sliding into place was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I stood there for a long time staring at the wood grain. I looked at the $200 in my hand. $200. That was the price of his father. I turned around and walked back to my truck. The rain felt colder now. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Courtney watching from the window, making sure the eyesore was gone. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but I wiped it away angrily. One down, one to go. I drove into the city, the lights of the skyline blurring through my wet windshield. My destination was the Obsidian Towers, the most exclusive apartment complex in the city. My daughter Bianca lived in the penthouse on the 45th floor. I remembered the day she signed the lease. She had hugged me so tight, telling me I was the best dad in the world. I had co-signed for her because her credit was not good enough yet. I wondered if that signature meant anything to her now. I parked my truck 2 blocks away because I knew the valet would not even let me near the entrance. I walked the rest of the way, hunched over against the wind. When I entered the lobby, the warmth hit me, but so did the security guard. He was a large man, and he stepped in front of me immediately, his hand on his belt. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his tone suggesting I was lost. "I am here to see my daughter Bianca Miller in the penthouse," I said, straightening my back as much as I could. He looked me up and down, taking in my worn boots and the plastic bag. "I do not think so," he sneered. "Residents only, or deliveries. You go around back for deliveries." "Call her," I said firmly. "Tell her Desmond is here. Her father." He hesitated, then picked up the phone. I watched him whisper something, then nod. He hung up and looked at me with a smirk. "She says she is coming down. You wait here. Do not sit on the furniture." 10 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Bianca stepped out. She looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine. Her hair was wrapped in a silk scarf, and she was wearing a plush robe over her designer clothes. She had clearly just come from the building's private spa. The scent of expensive lotion and lavender wafted toward me, clashing with the smell of my damp coat. Behind her was Kyle, her husband. Kyle was a tall man, with a sneer permanently etched onto his face. He had never liked me. He thought I was too loud, too working class, too black for his refined world. "Daddy," Bianca said, stopping 5 feet away from me. "What on earth is going on? The guard said you looked like a homeless person. Why are you dressed like that?" I lost it all. "Bianca," I said, repeating my script. "The company, the money, it is all gone. I have nowhere to sleep tonight." I watched her face, hoping to see the little girl who used to cry when her goldfish died. But that girl was gone, replaced by this woman who looked at her fingernails while her father spoke of ruin. "Are you serious?" she asked. "How could you be so irresponsible? You are almost 70 years old. You should have been more careful." "I need a place to stay." "Baby girl," I said, using her childhood nickname. "Just for a little while. Your place is huge. I could sleep in the guest room." Kyle stepped forward, crossing his arms. "That is not going to happen," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We are renovating the guest wing, converting it into a home gym and a meditation space. There is dust everywhere. It is not suitable." "Then the sofa," I said, desperate. "I will sleep on the sofa." Bianca laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "On my Italian leather sectional." "I do not think so, Daddy. Look, you cannot just show up here unannounced and expect us to disrupt our lives. We have a reputation in this building. The condo board is very strict about guests of a certain caliber." So that was it. I was not a father. I was a liability. I was a code violation. "Well, what am I supposed to do?" I asked, letting my shoulders slump. "I have no money. I have no home." Kyle took a step closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. "Look, Desmond," he said. "Be realistic. You are old. You are broke. You cannot expect Bianca to take care of you. We are busy professionals. We do not have the time or the patience to run a nursing home." He pulled out his smartphone, and tapped on it for a few seconds. "Here," he said, showing me the screen. "There is a state-run shelter downtown. St. Jude's. They take in people like you, indigent seniors. They have a meal program. And after that, you should look into the state nursing facilities. Medicaid will cover it. That is where you belong now. Among your peers. My peers." He meant the poor. He meant the forgotten. He meant the people he looked down on from his 45th floor balcony. Bianca nodded in agreement. "Kyle is right, Daddy. Honestly, it might be better for you. You would be with people who understand your situation. We just cannot have you here. It would be too stressful for me. You know how easily I get migraines." She adjusted her silk scarf, checking her reflection in the glass of the lobby door. "I am sorry, Daddy, but you made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. Or I guess lie in the shelter." She turned around without hugging me. She did not even offer me $5. She just turned her back and pressed the elevator button. Kyle lingered for a second longer, a triumphant smirk on his face. "Do not come back here, Desmond," he said, "unless you want me to call the police for trespassing." They stepped into the elevator and the doors slid shut. I was left alone in the lobby under the watchful eye of the security guard who looked like he was itching to throw me out. I walked back out into the night. The rain had stopped, but the air was colder than ever. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was the death of an illusion. For 30 years, I had told myself that I was working this hard for them, that the long nights, the missed birthdays, the stress, the ulcers were all worth it, because I was building a future for my children. I thought I was raising them to be better than me, to be kings and queens. But I was wrong. I had raised monsters. I had fed them with a silver spoon until they choked on their own privilege. I had shielded them from the harshness of the world so thoroughly that they had lost the ability to feel empathy. They were poor. They were the poorest people I had ever met. They had millions in the bank, but their souls were bankrupt. I climbed back into my truck. My hands were steady now. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I had one stop left. One child left. Jamal. My youngest. The one I had been hardest on. The one who refused my money to become a teacher in the inner city. The one who married a girl from the projects instead of a debutante. I started the engine. It roared to life, coughing and sputtering. I turned the truck toward the south side, toward the neighborhood we had all tried so hard to escape. I did not know what I would find there, but I knew one thing. The test was not over, and Judgment Day was coming. I pulled my truck up to the curb in front of Jamal's house. The streetlights here were dim and flickering, and the road was full of potholes that shook the old suspension of my pickup. This was the neighborhood I had worked so hard to get my family out of. It was ironic that after all these years, this was the only place I had left to go. Jamal's house was small. It was a single-story bungalow with yellow paint that was peeling off in large strips, revealing the gray wood underneath. The porch sagged a little to the left, and the screen door had a patch made of duct tape. But as I killed the engine, I noticed something else. A warm golden light spilled from the windows. It was not the cold, showy light of Andre's mansion or the sterile white light of Bianca's penthouse. It was the light of a home. I stepped onto the porch and knocked. My heart was pounding harder than it had at the other two houses. If Jamal turned me away, I would truly have nothing left to live for. The door opened. Jamal stood there in a worn t-shirt and sweatpants, holding a grading pen in his hand. He looked tired. Being a history teacher in an underfunded public school was not an easy job. When he saw me standing there, soaking wet with my trash bag of clothes, his eyes did not narrow with judgment. They widened with concern. "Dad," he said, dropping the pen. "What happened? Are you okay?" I looked at my feet, letting the shame wash over me. "I lost it all, son," I said, my voice trembling. "The business, the house, everything. I have nowhere to go." I braced myself for the questions. I expected him to ask how, to ask why I did not save more, to ask about his inheritance. But Jamal did not ask a single question about money. He did not look at my old truck. He did not look at my dirty coat. He just stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. It was a bear hug, tight and desperate. "Get in here, Pop," he said, pulling me over the threshold. "You are freezing. Keisha, get a towel. Dad is here." Keisha, his wife, came running from the kitchen. She was wearing an apron, and her hands were dusted with flour. She was a nurse, but she worked double shifts just to make ends meet. When she saw me, she did not ask about the mud on my boots. She ran to the linen closet and came back with a thick, warm towel. She wrapped it around my shoulders and began rubbing my arms to get the circulation back. "Sit down, Desmond," she said, guiding me to their lumpy sofa. "I was just heating up some gumbo. It is not much, but it will warm you up." I looked around the room. The furniture was second-hand, mismatched, and worn. The carpet had stains that had been scrubbed, but never fully removed. But on the walls were framed photos of the whole family, including me and Ruby. In Andre's house, there were no photos of us, only abstract art. Here I was, still part of the family. "We do not have a guest room," Jamal said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But you will take our room. It has the best mattress. Keisha and I can take the pull-out sofa." "No, son," I said, shaking my head. "I cannot take your bed. The sofa is fine." "I will not hear of it," Keisha said firmly, placing a steaming bowl of gumbo in my hands. "You are the patriarch of this family. You sleep in the bed. As long as we have a roof, you have a roof. As long as we eat, you will not starve. This is your house too, Pop." I ate the gumbo. It was simple food, rice and vegetables with very little meat, but it tasted better than any steak dinner I had ever paid for. I looked at Jamal and Keisha. They were smiling at me, trying to make me feel welcome, but I could see the worry in their eyes. I knew they were struggling. I knew I was a burden they could not afford. But they took me in anyway. That night I lay in their bed smelling the clean scent of laundry detergent and feeling the first real peace I had felt in months. But the test was not over. I had to be sure. I had to know how deep this well of kindness went. The next morning I put phase 2 of my plan into action. I stayed in bed when Jamal came in to check on me. I groaned, clutching my chest. "Dad." "What is it?" Jamal asked, rushing to my side. "It is my blood pressure," I wheezed. "I ran out of my medication yesterday. I need a refill, but I do not have insurance anymore. The prescription is expensive, son. It is $200. Jamal's face went pale. $200 was a fortune to them. I saw him look at Keisha, who was standing in the doorway. She bit her lip. I knew what they were thinking. That was their grocery money for the next 2 weeks. That was part of the rent. "I will take care of it, Dad," Jamal said, his voice steady even though his eyes were fearful. "You just rest. I will go to the pharmacy before school." He left the room. I waited a few minutes, then crept to the bedroom door to listen. They were in the kitchen, whispering. "Jamal, we do not have it," Keisha whispered. "We are already late on the electric bill. If we spend that money, we are going to be eating rice and beans for a month." "I know, baby," Jamal replied. "I know. But it is his heart. We cannot let him die." He took care of us when we were kids. He worked his fingers to the bone for this family. I do not care if I have to starve. My father is going to get his medicine. I went back to bed, my heart aching with a mixture of guilt and pride. I heard the front door close. Jamal was gone. An hour later, he returned. He came into the bedroom with a small white paper bag from the pharmacy and a tray of food. There were eggs, bacon, and toast. Real bacon, the expensive kind. He placed the tray on my lap and set the pill bottle on the nightstand. "Here you go, Pop," he said, smiling. "Took a little while, but I got it. And I made you a champion's breakfast. You need your strength." I looked at him. He looked lighter somehow, as if he had made a choice that freed him. I reached out to take the pill bottle, and that was when I saw it. I froze. Jamal's left hand was resting on the bedspread. His ring finger was bare. There was a pale line of skin where his gold wedding band used to be. The band that Ruby and I had bought for him. The only valuable thing he owned. "Son," I said, my voice choking. "Your ring. Where is your ring?" Jamal pulled his hand away quickly, hiding it behind his back. "Oh, that," he stammered. "I must have left it by the sink when I was washing dishes. Or maybe in my locker at school." "Do not worry about it, Pop. Eat your eggs before they get cold." He turned and hurried out of the room, saying he was late for class. I sat there staring at the bacon and the pills. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the fork. He had sold his wedding ring. He had sold the symbol of his marriage to buy medication for a father who he thought was a failure. I got up and walked to the kitchen. I needed to see it. I needed to be sure. I stepped on the pedal of the small plastic trash can in the corner. Right on top, sitting on a pile of coffee grounds, was a yellow slip of paper. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a receipt from the downtown pawn shop. Men's gold wedding band. 14 karat. Payout $300. I stared at the paper. $300. He had traded his most precious possession for $300 just to keep me alive. Just to feed me bacon. Tears blurred my vision. Hot, heavy tears that I could not stop. I had spent my life building a logistics empire, thinking that wealth was measured in trucks and warehouses and bank accounts. But I was wrong. I looked at the peeling paint on the walls and the empty refrigerator. This house was the richest place on earth. I wiped my eyes and folded the pawn ticket carefully, placing it in my pocket, next to the check for $50 million. The test was over. It was time for the world to turn upside down. I went to the window and looked out at the street. I was not waiting for a truck anymore. I was waiting for my lawyer. And when he arrived, the ground was going to shake. I was sitting on the front porch, enjoying the weak afternoon sun and watching the neighborhood kids play street hockey with a tennis ball. For the first time in decades, I did not have a schedule. I did not have a board meeting. I just had the simple rhythm of life in Jamal's house. But that peace was about to be shattered. It started with a low rumble that vibrated through the wooden floorboards beneath my feet. It was the sound of high-performance engines. I looked down the street and saw them. Two sleek black SUVs winding their way through the narrow pothole-filled road like sharks swimming in a kiddie pool. A Range Rover and a Mercedes G-Wagon. They looked alien here, shiny and aggressive against the backdrop of faded siding and chain-link fences. I knew exactly who they were. My heart sank, not for me, but for Jamal. I had hoped for a few more days of peace before the storm, but the vultures had arrived early. The cars pulled up right in front of the house, blocking the driveway and half the sidewalk. I saw Mrs. Johnson next door pull her curtains back to peek. In this neighborhood, cars like that usually meant trouble, either police or drug dealers. But these were just my children. Andre stepped out first, adjusting his designer sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. Then Courtney emerged, looking terrified that her heels might touch actual dirt. From the second car, Bianca and Kyle stepped out. Bianca was holding a handkerchief to her face as if the air itself in this zip code was toxic. I stayed seated on the porch swing, my hands resting on my knees. I watched them approach. They did not look like a family coming to visit. They looked like a demolition crew coming to inspect a condemned building. Andre walked up the steps, first avoiding the loose board I had meant to fix that morning. "Dad," he said, his voice tight with forced patience. "We need to talk. We found out you were staying here." I looked at him. "How did you find out?" I asked calmly. Bianca answered from behind him. Her voice was sharp. "Someone from the country club saw your old truck parked on this street. They took a picture and sent it to me asking if my father was lost. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? They were not here because they were worried about my health. They were not here because they missed me. They were here because I was a stain on their reputation. I was a loose thread that needed to be cut before I unraveled their perfect image." They crowded onto the small porch, sucking the air out of the space. Kyle looked around with a sneer curling his lip. "This place is a dump," he muttered. "It is a fire hazard." Jamal opened the door then. He must have heard the commotion. He stood in the doorway still wearing his work clothes from school chalk dust on his pants. When he saw his siblings, his face hardened. "What are you all doing here?" he asked. "We are here to fix this mess," Andre said, pushing past Jamal into the living room. The others followed, invading the sanctuary of the small house. They brought the smell of expensive leather and judgment with them, overpowering the scent of Keisha's cooking. Inside the living room, the confrontation began instantly. They did not sit down. They refused to touch the furniture. They stood in the center of the room like they were afraid of catching a disease. Bianca looked around at the peeling paint and the mismatched furniture. She let out a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Jamal," she said, shaking her head, "look at this place. You can barely take care of yourself. How do you expect to take care of Dad?" "I am doing just fine, Bianca," Jamal said, his voice low. "Dad has a bed. He has food. He has family. That is more than you offered him." Kyle stepped forward, holding a glossy brochure in his hand. He slapped it onto the coffee table. "Be realistic, Jamal. This is not sustainable. Your father needs professional care. He is destitute. He is a burden. You are a teacher, for God's sake. You make what, 40,000 a year. You cannot support a dependent." I watched Jamal's jaw tighten. He looked at the brochure. It was for a state-run facility, a place where they warehoused the old and forgotten. "We have a solution," Courtney chimed in. "We found a facility. It is state-funded, but we are willing to pay for the first month to get him settled. They have 3 meals a day. They have a bed. It is where people in his situation go." Bianca crossed her arms. "Exactly. It is the responsible thing to do. Sign the papers, Jamal. Let them take him. You do not want to drag yourself down further, do you? You are already living in a slum. Do not add a dead weight to your life." Something in the room shifted. The air became heavy with electricity. I saw Jamal's hands curl into fists at his sides. He was the gentle one, the peacemaker, the one who always walked away from a fight. But they had made a mistake. They had insulted his father in his own home. They had called his love a burden. Jamal stepped forward, and for a moment he looked 10 feet tall. He stepped between me and them, shielding me with his body. "Get out," he said. The room went silent. Andre blinked, confused. "Excuse me." "I said get out," Jamal shouted, and his voice shook the walls. "Get out of my house. You come in here with your $1,000 suits and your judgment, and you dare to tell me how to love my father. You call him a burden. You call him a dead weight. He carried you. He carried all of us on his back for 40 years. He built the foundation you are standing on." Kyle scoffed. "He is broke, Jamal. He is a nobody now. He is my father." Jamal roared, pointing a finger at the door. "And he is a king in this house. I would sell the clothes off my back to feed him. I would work 3 jobs to keep a roof over his head. Because that is what family does. We do not throw people away when they stop being useful. We do not ship them off to a warehouse." He took a breath, his chest heaving. "You think you are rich because you have money. You are poor. You are the poorest people I know. Now get out. Get out before I throw you out." I had never seen my youngest son like this. He was trembling with rage, his eyes burning with a fire I recognized. It was the same fire I had when I started my company, the fire of dignity. Andre and Bianca looked at each other stunned. They had never been spoken to like this by their little brother. Courtney looked scared. Kyle looked ready to argue, but Jamal took another step forward, and Kyle backed down. "Fine," Andre spat, straightening his jacket. "Have it your way. Rot in this hole together. Do not come crying to us when the power gets cut off." "We will not," Bianca added, turning her nose up. "Consider this the last time we try to help. You are on your own." They turned and marched out the door, their heels clicking angrily on the floorboards. I heard the car doors slam and the engines roar to life. Jamal stood there breathing hard, watching them go. He did not move until the sound of their cars had faded completely. Then he turned to me. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by a deep sorrow. He walked over and knelt beside my chair. "I am sorry, Pop," he whispered. "I am sorry you had to hear that. I will never let them take you. Never." I placed my hand on his head, feeling the coarse texture of his hair. I knew then that the test was truly over. My heart was full to bursting. I looked at the door where the so-called rich people had just left, and then down at the son who had nothing but love to give. I knew exactly what I had to do next. The waiting was over. It was time for the reveal. The SUVs were just shifting into gear to speed away from the poverty of Jamal's street, when a long, sleek black limousine turned the corner. It moved like a predator, taking up the entire narrow road. It stopped right in the middle of the street, blocking Andre and Bianca completely. They honked their horns, annoyed at this delay, but the limo did not move. The driver door opened, and a man in a tuxedo stepped out. He opened the rear door, and out stepped Sterling, my personal attorney for 30 years. He was followed by 2 large men in dark suits who scanned the area with professional indifference. Andre and Bianca rolled down their windows, ready to scream at the newcomers to move, but the words died in their throats when they saw Sterling walk past their luxury cars without even a glance. He walked straight up the cracked walkway to the porch where I was sitting. He did not look at the peeling paint. He did not look at the trash can. He looked only at me. He stopped 3 feet away and bowed his head respectfully. "Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman Sterling," said his voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "I am pleased to report that the transaction has cleared. The sale of the logistics fleet is final. The funds have been wired to your private holding company." He placed a heavy leather briefcase on the rickety table between me and Jamal. He clicked the latches open, turning the case so we could see inside. There sat a stack of documents and a single cashier check. The numbers were typed in bold black ink. $50 million. The silence that followed was heavy. Andre and Bianca had climbed out of their cars, leaving the doors open. Courtney and Kyle were standing there, their mouths hanging open like fish gasping for air. They looked at the briefcase, then at me, then back at the briefcase. I stood up. I did not stand up like a tired old man with a bad back. I stood up like the man who had built an empire from asphalt and sweat. I straightened my spine. I looked them in the eye, and the authority I had wielded for 40 years returned in full force. I am not bankrupt, I said, my voice strong and steady. I did not lose the company. I sold it. I sold it because I wanted to retire and spend my last years with my family. But first, I had to know who my family actually was. I turned to Jamal, who was looking at the money with shock. He had not moved to touch it. He was still just protecting me. Son, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder, you were ready to sell your wedding ring to feed me. You gave me your bed. You defended my dignity when you had nothing to gain. You are the only one worthy of carrying my legacy. I picked up the check and handed it to him. This is for you. $40 million. Use it to fix this house. Use it to buy that school you teach at, and turn it into the best academy in the city. The rest is for the foundation which you will run. Andre stepped forward, his face pale and sweating. Dad, wait. He stammered, a nervous smile trying to form on his lips. We did not know. We were just trying to do what was best for you. We can explain. We were just stressed. I held up a hand, stopping him cold. Save it, Andre. And there is one more thing. You and Bianca seem to think you own those big houses you live in. You do not. You forget that when you bought them, I was the one who guaranteed the loans through the company assets. Now that the company is sold, the debts are being called in. I reviewed the terms with Sterling this morning. Since you have both been missing payments to support your lavish lifestyles and parties, the bank is exercising its right to foreclose. Effective immediately, my holding company is reclaiming both properties. You have 30 days to vacate. The blood drained from Bianca's face. She grabbed Kyle's arm for support, but he pulled away from her as if she were on fire. He looked at her with pure disgust. You told me he was broke, Kyle hissed. You told me we were safe. I am not going to be homeless with you. I am calling my lawyer. Courtney was already on her phone, walking away from Andre toward the limo, trying to catch Sterling's eye, flashing a desperate smile. The rats were fleeing the sinking ship. I put my arm around Jamal and Keisha, who were crying tears of relief. Let them go, I said softly. We have work to do. And for the first time in a long time, the air tasted sweet. 6 months have passed since the day the limousines blocked our narrow street. Today, I am sitting at a sturdy oak table in a beautiful new home. It is not a cold museum like the mansion Andre lost to foreclosure. It is a warm, vibrant place filled with sunlight and the smell of Keisha's famous pot roast. The paint is fresh, the roof is sound, and the mortgage is paid in full. Jamal sits across from me, his face glowing with pride as he shows me the blueprints for the new community center he is building. Keisha is smiling, her hand resting gently on her growing belly. Yes, I am going to be a grandfather again. And this time I know for a fact that these children will be raised with values, not just valuables. As laughter fills the room, I look out the large bay window at the evening sky where the first stars are beginning to twinkle. I feel a warmth in my chest that has nothing to do with the fireplace. I look up and whisper so only the wind can hear me. You see that, Ruby? You were right. We did not fail. We still have one good child. We raised a man who knows the true measure of worth. This journey taught me a painful but necessary lesson that I want to share with you. Money is the ultimate truth serum. It strips away the masks people wear and reveals what is truly in their hearts. My millions did not buy me loyalty from my eldest children. It only bought their pretense. But poverty revealed the diamond that is Jamal. Never despise your parents when they are old and weak. Do not see them as burdens to be discarded or problems to be solved, because the blessings you receive in life often come from the very hands you are too ashamed to hold. True wealth is not what is in your bank account. It is who is sitting at your table when you have nothing left to offer but yourself. Now I want to turn this over to you. What would you have done if you were in Jamal's shoes? Would you have sold your most precious possession to help a parent who seemed to have nothing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you agree that family should always come before fortune, please comment. Family is number one. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about justice and redemption. And please tell me which state you are watching from right now. I love reading your comments and seeing how far our community extends. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find an open door when you need one.